Welcome to the Explainer. Okay, if you've ever looked at a massive, complex company and thought, how is this whole thing not just collapsing into total chaos? Well, you are in the right place. Today, we're building the ultimate study guide for the vital steering wheel of business management, organizational control. So here's our roadmap for this Explainer. We'll be looking at the foundation of control, the three types of control, the all-important four-step blueprint, control frameworks in action, and finally, managing organizational change. Let's just get right into it.
All right, section 1, the foundation of control.
Before we build a house, let's lay the foundation. Think about this for a second. How do you managers actually know if they're succeeding? Like if they roll out some massive, expensive new strategy, how do they measure if it's actually working in the real world?
Well, the answer is organizational control. Basically, it's how managers monitor and regulate things to make sure the organization and its people are actually hitting their goals efficiently. Without it, honestly, they're just flying completely blind. But with it, they unlock top-tier efficiency, quality, customer responsiveness, and even innovation.
Moving right along to section 2, 3 types of control.
Now, if we look at the timeline of control, there are basically 3 chronological phases where management can step in. At the input stage, you've got feed-forward control. That's anticipating problems before they even happen. Then, during the conversion stage, there's concurrent control, which is all about fixing things on the fly. And finally, at the output stage, we have feedback control, where you use customer reactions to fix things for the next time around.
Let's zoom in on that first one for a second because it's super important. Feed-forward control. This is literally just anticipating problems at the input stage. Imagine a manufacturer giving super strict specs to their suppliers way in advance. By locking down the quality of the inputs early, you're preventing a total disaster down the line. It's completely proactive rather than reactive.
Here's a great real-world example of that. Think about the University of Alabama on game day. Tens of thousands of fans are flooding the campus, right? Instead of just waiting for absolute gridlock, the university uses feed-forward control. They send out tons of parking and event info well in advance. They anticipate the logistical nightmare and, they solve it before a single car even parks.
Okay, listen up, because this is section 3, the 4 control steps. This is the absolute core of our study guide today.
Every single successful manager uses this exact sequential 4-step loop. It is the ultimate blueprint for control. Let's lock these into your memory right now. Step 1, establish standards. Step 2, measure actual performance. Step 3, compare against those standards. And step 4, evaluate and correct. 4 simple active verbs. Let's break down exactly how to pull each one off. Step 1 sets the entire stage. You have to establish your specific standards, goals, or targets. Because, hey, you can't hit a target you haven't drawn, right? For example, say you're a customer service manager. You might set a standard that every single client email has to be answered within 24 hours. Boom, that is a clear, measurable goal. Once that goal is locked in, step 2 is where the rubber meets the road, measuring actual performance. You're measuring what workers are producing, or maybe measuring the behavior itself. But here's the tricky part, and definitely keep this in mind for your exams. Non-routine tasks are way harder to measure. Counting widgets on an assembly line? Easy. Measuring the creative output of an R&D scientist? Yeah, that takes a much more nuanced approach. Next up, step 3. This is the reality check. You compare the actual performance you just measured against those standards from step 1. You're basically looking for the deviation. If your standard is answering emails in 24 hours, but the actual average is taking 48 hours, well, we have a clear deviation that needs addressing. Which brings us perfectly to our final action. Step 4, evaluate the result and initiate corrective action if you're falling short. If a manager sees that performance is unacceptable, they can't just shrug it off. They have to actually change how the work is being done to solve the problem. That might mean retraining the team, bringing in new software, or maybe just totally redesigning the whole process.
All right, section 4, applying the blueprint.
So how do these 4 steps look in the wild? Well, one major framework is bureaucratic control. Picture an automobile assembly line. This type of control uses a massive system of rules and standard operating procedures to shape behavior. Every action is performed the exact same way, every single time. It sounds rigid, but that strict adherence is what maintains top-tier quality and massive efficiency.
Another way to apply the blueprint is the balance scorecard. Developed by Kaplan and Norton, this is basically a reminder that step 1, establishing standards, should not just be about money. It forces you to look at the whole picture. So alongside financial metrics, you're establishing standards for customer service, internal business processes, and employee learning and growth. And then we have benchmarking. Think of this as taking step 3, comparing performance, but instead of looking internally, you're looking completely outside your own company walls. You're comparing yourself against other high-performing organizations. A really famous example is when Xerox actively benchmarked themselves against a totally different company known for excellence, LL Bean. They actually used LL Bean's high standards to fuel their own internal corrections. Pretty smart, right?
Finally, Section 5, managing organizational change.
Look, when you apply those 4 steps of control and realize something has to change, you generally face 2 paths. On one hand, you have evolutionary change. This is gradual, incremental, narrowly focused. It's just a constant, slow adjustment. But on the other hand, you have revolutionary change. This is rapid, dramatic, broadly focused. It's a bold, radical shift in the very structure of the company, and it almost always comes from the top down.
Because ultimately, control isn't just about keeping things exactly the same. It's about knowing exactly when and how to change them. So I want to leave you with this. When you apply these 4 steps of control to your own work, establishing standards, measuring, comparing, and correcting, are you steering toward a steady evolution, or are you sparking a dramatic revolution? Keep that in mind as you put this study guide into practice. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.